and laughed. "You're still sensitive about childhood." Then shut up when my uncle refused to look anyone in the eye. The laugh came out high and sharp, bouncing off the fake brick walls of the restaurant, but it died halfway through when she realized he'd gone completely still. His fork froze above his plate, a piece of medium-rare steak hovering midair, and he stared down at the mashed potatoes like they were suddenly the most interesting thing in the world. The TV over the bar was playing a rugby recap with the sound off, cutlery clinked, kids shrieked in the play area down the back, and at our table it was like someone hit mute. Aunt Deb's smile glitched, eyes flicking from his profile to my face and back again. I felt my own throat go dry. My fingers tightened around the condensation-wet glass of Coke until the ice cubes squeaked. The table suddenly felt too small, too bright, like the overhead lights were pointed directly at us. My cousin Liv's eyes jumped between the three of us, wide and confused, while my mum reached for her wine with a speed I recognized. Uncle Ray just chewed slowly, jaw working, still not looking up, not at me, not at his wife, not at anyone. It was a Sunday lunch in late October, one of those family catch-ups that are half tradition, half obligation, and 90% emotional booby traps. I'm 29F. I've been in therapy for the last year and a bit, trying to untangle why I have panic attacks in supermarkets and dissociate during arguments and feel like a liar whenever I talk about my own memories. My family's official position is that we had a normal, loving childhood, with the usual ups and downs. My nervous system disagrees. The backstory for the comment that detonated the table is that 2 weeks ago, I made the apparently unforgivable mistake of telling the truth at a barbecue. We were at my parents' place, all the usual suspects there: Mom, Dad, my younger brother Josh, my Aunt Deb and Uncle Ray, my cousins Liv and Max, plus Liv's boyfriend who was trying very hard to impress everyone by complimenting the potato bake. Someone made a joke about how kids these days would report their parents for one little smack, and my stomach did that cold flip thing it does. I'd had exactly half a cider, the kind of mild buzz where the words in my brain feel a fraction less trapped. So instead of staying quiet, I said, "Well, to be fair, some of us got more than one little smack." There was that split-second silence, like when you drop a plate, and everyone waits to see if it's going to shatter. Aunt Deb laughed first. She always does. "Oh, here we go," she'd said, waving her hand. "You're still sensitive about childhood, Em. We all got a hiding now and then. It's just how it was. Didn't do you any harm." Josh had coughed quietly into his beer. Uncle Ray had suddenly found the pattern in the tablecloth very interesting. I felt my heart slam against my ribs, but I was also weirdly calm. "It did do harm," I'd said. To me, at least. Being locked in the dark laundry for talking back wasn't normal. Getting dragged out of bed by my ankle wasn't normal. Having my arm twisted until I said I was lying wasn't normal. It hurt me. I hadn't said who did those things. I didn't have to. Everyone at that barbecue knew who did the disciplining in our family. The air had shifted then. Mum went bright red and started fussing with the salad tongs. Dad said, "Oh, for God's sake, it wasn't that bad," in his tired, annoyed voice. Aunt Deb rolled her eyes and changed the subject. Later that night she texted me, "Deb, you know I love you, but bringing all that up like that was unfair. Your uncle feels awful enough about how things were. You're making it sound like abuse and it wasn't. You're still very sensitive about childhood. Maybe talk to your therapist about letting go." XO. I'd stared at the message for a long time, hand shaking, then put my phone face down and gone to bed instead of replying. And now here we all were, 2 Sundays later, crammed into a chain steakhouse because Aunt Deb wanted no one stuck in the kitchen for once, and had sent a family group chat invite with a million exclamation marks. I almost didn't go. My therapist had said, "You don't have to keep putting yourself in the same dynamic to prove anything." And intellectually I believed her. But there's a stupid, stubborn part of me that still wants to show up. To be seen. To not be the one who, dramatically, opts out, So I went. And for the first 40 minutes, it was almost fine. We talked about work and TV shows and how expensive petrol is. Uncle Ray did his usual routine of telling the waitress, "I'll have the biggest steak you've got." Like he'd invented the joke. Liv showed me photos of her new rescue dog. I sipped my Coke and focused on breathing. Then Max, who is 16 and apparently tired of pretending we're a normal family too, looked straight at me and said, "Mum said you're writing some big letter about the past. Are you gonna sue them?" Aunt Deb choked on her water. "Max," she hissed. My face burned. I hadn't told anyone except my therapist, and briefly, Josh, that I was writing a kind of narrative for myself, trying to get the memories in order. Not a lawsuit. Not some public blog post. Just words on a page so I could see them. "I'm not suing anyone," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "I'm just working through stuff." "That's what I said," Max shrugged. "I told Mum you're just processing. She said you're still." "Max," Aunt Deb said again, louder this time. Her smile was pasted on now. "Enough. We're not talking about that." He shrugged again and returned to his chips. But the button had been pushed. That's when she laughed and dropped the line. "You're still sensitive about childhood." Same tone as at the barbecue, like she was swatting away a fly. Except this time, when the words hit the table, my uncle didn't pick up his cue to chuckle or add a "kids these days" joke. He just shut down. Now, in the restaurant, watching him stare at his potatoes, I felt something in my chest twist. Part of me, the little girl part, panicked. He's angry, he's going to explode, you've ruined lunch. Another part, the adult who'd spent months in that therapist's armchair, thought good. "Ray?" Aunt Deb said, voice wobbling around the edges. "What, no jokes? You're unusually quiet." She tried to make it sound teasing, but her eyes were tight. He swallowed his mouthful, slow and deliberate, then set his fork down very carefully. His knuckles were white around the handle. "I don't think it's funny," he said without looking up. The whole table kind of collectively blinked. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. I could have laughed, or apologized, or made a joke, or changed the subject. That's what I've always done. Smooth it over. Pretend it doesn't hurt. Instead, I heard myself say, "Me either." The words fell between us like a dropped plate. Liv, bless her, tried to save it with a little giggle. "Okay, heavy," she said. "So, has anyone seen that new Ryan Reynolds movie where—" "No," Uncle Ray said, cutting across her. His voice was rough. "We're not changing the subject again." Again. There it was. A tiny confession. I'd like to say I seized the moment like some brave main character in a film, but the truth is, my first instinct was to disappear. My skin went hot, my ears rang, my tongue felt too big in my mouth. I thought about standing up and going to the bathroom and just walking out the front door instead. Getting in my car, driving until the petrol light came on, and starting a new life somewhere no one knew my middle name or my history. Instead, I dug my nails into my thigh under the table, a trick my therapist taught me to keep myself in my body, and took a slow breath. "You don't think it's funny?" Aunt Deb said. She was still trying to laugh. "Ray, you were the one who always said we were too soft on them. You were the one with the hard but fair speeches." He flinched at that. A tiny movement, barely there, but I saw it. "Yeah," he said. "I know." His voice cracked on the last word. No one spoke. The waitress, oblivious to the emotional implosion, chose that exact moment to appear at my elbow with a too bright smile and ask, "How is everyone's meal?" "Great, thanks," Mum said automatically, voice high. "Yeah, good," Josh echoed, not even looking up. I managed a tight smile. "It's fine," I said, which felt like a summary of my entire childhood. When she left, Aunt Deb leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Okay," she said in that fake reasonable tone she uses when she's actually furious. If we're going to have this out, let's have it out. Because I am sick of walking on eggshells because M has decided to rewrite history after a few therapy sessions. My stomach dropped. There it was. The thing. I opened my mouth. Closed it. My throat decided it was a door that only swung one way. Air out, no words. Josh shifted next to me, but I couldn't tell if he was about to jump in or bolt. I'm not rewriting anything, I managed finally. My voice sounded small, even to me. I'm just not pretending anymore that it was fine. It wasn't fine for me. Oh, please, Aunt Deb snapped. You had a roof over your head. You always had food. You went to a good school. Your parents did their best. Did they get angry sometimes? Sure. Everyone did. But this. She waved her fork vaguely in my direction, almost flicking gravy at Max. This whole I was abused narrative is cruel. It's cruel. I felt the word like a slap. I'm cruel. Not the grown men who shouted in my face, or the hands that left bruises. Me. For saying the word out loud. I never actually used the word abuse at the barbecue. I said it hurt me? You're the one who. You're implying it. She cut in. And you know it. You're making your uncle out to be some kind of monster when he was the only one who had the guts to discipline you properly. Your parents were too soft. You were wild. Do you remember? You were a nightmare teenager. I laughed because the alternative was screaming. I was depressed. I said. I was self-harming in your bathroom at Christmas, and you told me not to get blood on the towels. Her face went pale. That is not true, she whispered. It is, I said. You might not remember it. I do. Uncle Ray still hadn't looked up. His shoulders were hunched, big frame somehow folded in on itself. Mum said suddenly, voice shaking. Can we not do this in public? Why not? I asked. We did everything else in public. The shouting, the dragging, the you want something to cry about, speeches. They all happened in front of an audience. We never hit you in the face. Dad said, like that was a reasonable contribution. We never broke bones. It was just smacks. You make it sound like we killed someone. Josh swore softly under his breath. Liv's eyes filled with tears, she was clearly trying to blink away. I'm not making it sound like anything, I said. I'm telling you how it felt for me. That's what therapy is. It's me finally listening to that kid instead of gaslighting her on your behalf. That's what this is about. Aunt Deb said, pointing her knife at me like a conductor's baton. That damn therapist putting ideas in your head. No one put ideas in my head, I said. The memories were already there. She just believes me. Aunt Deb rolled her eyes so hard I was surprised they didn't detach. Memories, she scoffed. Memory is unreliable, love. You of all people should know that. You were always so dramatic. The time your mum raised her voice because you'd nearly been hit by a car, you told Nana she screamed at you for nothing and had Nana in tears for weeks. That's not why Nana cried, I said quietly. She cried because she found the marks on my legs when she was helping me into the bath that summer. She asked me why I flinched when she touched my back. Aunt Deb froze. That one landed hard. Nana had been her mother. My grandmother. The only adult back then who'd ever really sat with me when I was upset in a way that didn't feel like a performance review. What marks? She asked, but her voice was suddenly tiny. The belt ones, I said. From when Uncle Ray thought Josh and I had broken the garage window. It was the neighbor's kids. We told you that over and over. At the mention of his name, Uncle Ray finally lifted his head. His eyes met mine for the first time that afternoon. And what I saw there wasn't anger. It wasn't defensiveness. It was devastation. He looked old. Older than his 59 years. The lines around his mouth dug deeper, like the words he'd swallowed were finally carving their way out. I remember, he said. His voice was hoarse. It wasn't the neighbor's kids. It was you, Josh. Josh's head snapped up. What? You broke the window, Uncle Ray said. You told me, years later, after a few beers. You felt guilty. I told you not to tell anyone, that it was all over with now. But at the time, he trailed off, swallowed. At the time I thought you two were lying to my face. And nothing made me more angry than being lied to. You thought we were lying, I said. My hands were shaking so hard now I had to put my Coke down. So you hit us until we admitted something we didn't do. No one hit. Aunt Deb started automatically. Deb, stop, he said, finally turning to her. The look he gave her made her mouth snap shut like a trap. So you remember, I said. You remember the belt. You remember the laundry. You remember pulling me out of bed by my ankle. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, there were tears in them. This man who'd always talked about crocodile tears, and real men don't cry, had tears in his eyes in the middle of a steakhouse. Yes, he said. I remember. The table went dead silent. Even the ambient restaurant noise felt like it faded to a dull hum. I told myself I was being old school, he went on, voice low. That my dad did worse to me. That I was just toughening you up. I thought if I could knock the defiance out of you young, you'd be all right in the world. That's what we believed, where I'm from. He let out a short, bitter laugh. Turns out, all I did was make you scared of me. He looked at me again. Full on. No dodging. You were scared of me, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, I said. My own voice surprised me with how steady it was. I was terrified of you. My hands were clammy. My heart felt like it was going to punch a hole through my ribs. But underneath the terror, there was this weird, raw relief. For the first time in my life, an adult who hurt me wasn't saying, "It wasn't that bad," or, "You're exaggerating." He was saying, "I did that." Aunt Deb was crying now too, but her tears came with barbs. "We were doing our best," she whispered. "We were young. We didn't have parenting blogs and gentle parenting nonsense and everyone telling us we were doing it wrong. We had my mum in one ear saying, 'Kids need discipline,' and the news in the other telling us if we didn't keep you off the streets you'd end up on drugs. We weren't monsters. We fed you. We took you to the beach. I know," I said, "because that's the confusing part. You did good things too. That's what makes it so hard. You made fairy bread for my birthdays. You came to my school plays. Uncle Ray taught me to ride a bike. I still remember you running beside me, holding the seat." He gave a choked laugh. "You screamed the whole time," he said. "Yeah," I said. "Because I thought if I fell you'd be mad." His face crumpled. "Jesus," he whispered. Aunt Deb wiped her eyes angrily. "So what now?" she demanded. "You want us to fall on our knees in the middle of Hog's Breath and beg your forgiveness? You want to tell the world your uncle's a child abuser? You want us to be grateful you've decided to call us out?" I shook my head. "I don't want anything from you," I said. "I mean, okay, that's a lie. The little kid in me wants a lot. She wants you to say you're sorry, properly, and mean it. She wants you to go back in time and not do it. She wants to feel like she wasn't crazy for being scared. But I know you can't undo anything. I came today because I needed to know if I was completely insane. If I made it up. Hearing him say he remembers, that's something." "So that's it," she said. "You dumped this at our feet and then what? You cut us off? You never bring your future kids around us? You ruin Christmas? I don't know," I said honestly. "I'm still figuring that out. The truth is, I'd thought about no contact. It's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot on this subreddit. Sometimes too easily, like cutting off your entire family is as simple as unfollowing someone on Instagram. The reality is messier. There's paperwork and shared history and Grandma's 80th, and your brother's wedding and all these other people tangled up in the net. It's not just about punishing the person who hurt you. It's about what you can live with, and what you can't. I just know, I said slowly, that I can't keep doing the version where we all pretend it was fine and I keep having panic attacks in the bathroom because everyone laughs about remember when Em had such a temper. I was there for some of it, Josh said suddenly. His voice was quiet but clear. Everyone turned. He rarely speaks up in these things. He's learnt, like most of the men in my family, that silence is safer. I remember the belt, he said. I remember the laundry. I remember you telling us if we cried loud enough the neighbors would call the cops and you'd tell them we were liars. I'm not as sensitive as Em, apparently, but it messed me up too. I just drank about it for a decade instead of going to therapy. Mum's hand flew to her mouth. Josh, she whispered. He shrugged. What? We're doing honesty, aren't we? Aunt Deb looked like someone had slapped her. Twice. Her gaze flitted between us, desperate for someone to throw her a lifeline. But you two turned out fine, she said weakly. I laughed again, this time louder. A couple at the next table glanced over. I have an anxiety disorder, I said. I dissociate during conflict. Josh has been to rehab. Fine is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. Uncle Ray pushed his plate away, not even half finished. His face was wet now. I am sorry, he said, and I believed him, which made it both better and worse. I know it doesn't fix anything. I know it's too late. But I was a bastard. I thought I was doing what my dad did, but he was a bastard too. I didn't know how to break it. You could have stopped when we cried, I said. I know, he said. His voice broke altogether on that word. Christ, Em, I know. He started to reach across the table, then seemed to think better of it, letting his hand drop back into his lap. I didn't forgive him in that moment. This isn't that kind of story. There wasn't a swelling soundtrack or a group hug. But something shifted. The gaslight flickered. Maybe I imagined it. Loop in my head lost a little power. The manager, sensing the vibe maybe, came over and asked if everything was okay. Aunt Deb pasted on her hostess' smile and said, We're fine, just a family discussion, in that tone that says drop it. Later, when the plates were cleared and dessert menus offered and declined, we sat in a weird, heavy quiet. Max and Liv retreated into their phones. Mum stared at her empty wine glass. Dad just looked tired. I excused myself and went to the bathroom, partly because I needed to pee, mostly because I needed to breathe somewhere that didn't smell like grilled meat and regret. In the stall, I leaned my head against the cold metal partition and let a few tears slip out. Not the ugly sobbing of my nightmares, just a slow leak. I watched them drip onto the back of my hand and thought, you're allowed. You're not a bad person for crying in a bathroom. When I came out to wash my hands, Aunt Deb was at the sinks, dabbing at her mascara with a wad of toilet paper. Our eyes met in the mirror. I didn't know about Nana, she said quietly. About the marks. I know, I said. She didn't tell you. She thought it would make things worse. That sounds like her, she whispered. Always trying to keep the peace. We stood there in awkward silence for a bit. I'm not your enemy, you know, she said suddenly. I love you. I always have. I babysat you for God's sake. I held you when your mum went back to work. I took you to the zoo. I'm not. I know, I said again. And I did in a twisted way. She'd been there for so many good moments. But she'd also stood there laughing when bad things happened. Or looked away. Or told me I was too sensitive when I tried to talk about them. I just wish, I said, that loving me had included listening to me when I said I was hurt. She flinched like I'd slapped her. You have no idea what it was like back then, she said defensively. We had nothing. Your uncle worked 60 hours a week. Your mom and I were exhausted. There wasn't room for all this. She gestured vaguely at me, at my wet eyes, at the bathroom as if it were a symbol. I get it, I said. I do. That's why I'm in therapy instead of suing you. But you can't keep telling me my memories are wrong just because they're inconvenient. She looked at me in the mirror for a long time, then looked away. I need some time, she said. Take all the time you need, I replied. I've had 20 years. When we went back to the table, the bill had arrived. There was the usual dance of, we'll get it, no, we insist, until Dad just tossed his card down. Everyone stood up in that awkward scraping of chairs and gathering of bags. People hugged a little too tightly, like they could squeeze the awkward out. Uncle Ray came over to me last. He hesitated, then said, "Can I?" and opened his arms a fraction. I stepped back just a little. Enough that he saw. "Not yet," I said. He nodded like he'd expected that. "Fair," he said. "If ever." "I don't know yet," I said. We stood there for a second. Then he said, so quietly I almost missed it, "I keep having this dream, you know. That I'm standing outside the laundry door, and you're inside, and I can hear you crying, and I'm banging on the door and shouting at myself to open it, but I can't. Maybe that's what I get." I didn't know what to do with that. Part of me wanted to comfort him. Part of me wanted to scream, "Good." Instead I just said, "Maybe that's your work," and picked up my bag. In the car park, Josh fell into step beside me. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I said. "Yes. I don't know." He huffed a laugh. "Same." We stood by my car for a bit, watching Aunt Deb and Uncle Ray walk to theirs. She was talking fast, hands flying, and he was just nodding, staring at the asphalt. "You were brave," Josh said eventually. "I feel like I was hit by a truck." I said. "Yeah," he said. "Brave and trucked." We both laughed weakly. "Hey," he added, more serious. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you said it. I know I make jokes and minimize everything. But I remember. And it helps hearing you say I'm not crazy either." "Same," I said. "Promise me if you ever have kids you won't hang that no crying in this house crap on the wall." He snorted. "If I have kids, I'm going to be so terrified of messing them up I'll probably go the other way and let them set the curtains on fire just to avoid yelling." Cool, I said. "I'll be the strict aunt who enforces bedtimes and introduces the concept of vegetables." We hugged then, properly, the kind of hug that remembers bunk beds and shared secrets. That night I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, the document I'd been calling the story, blinking back at me. So far, it was a disjointed mess of scenes: the laundry, the belt, Nana's bath, Mum saying, "Stop being dramatic," Aunt Deb laughing at me at 13 for crying over a boy. In therapy, we'd talked about how writing it all down wasn't about creating evidence. It was about giving my younger self a witness. I added a new scene, the steakhouse. Aunt Deb's laugh. Uncle Ray's fork hovering. "I don't think it's funny." The way my Coke glass felt in my hand. The soft. I remember. I wrote until my eyes burned. Then I sat back, read it all over, and for the first time, instead of thinking, maybe it wasn't that bad, I thought, no wonder I'm like this. Reddit loves a neat ending. I went no contact and now my life is perfect. They apologized and we all cried and are healed. I don't have that. Since that lunch, things have been complicated. Aunt Deb hasn't texted me. She still comments on my Instagram posts with generic, "Looking gorgeous" stuff, but she hasn't mentioned the conversation. Mum oscillates between pretending it never happened and sending me articles about adult children cutting off parents, with captions like, "Scary that this is so common now." Uncle Ray sent me a one-line text that said, "I meant it when I said I'm sorry," and I stared at it for an hour before replying with, "I heard you. I don't know yet what I'm going to do about future Christmases, about birthdays, about Nana's memorial next year. I don't know if Aunt Deb and I will ever have a real conversation where she stops defending past her long enough to sit with present me. I don't know if I'll ever hug my uncle again. What I do know is, I'm not crazy. The default story in my head for years was, you're dramatic, you're making a mountain out of a molehill, your childhood was fine, everyone gets yelled at, lots of people have it worse, shut up. Today, for the first time, in their own words, they cracked that story open. And laughed. You're still sensitive about childhood. Then shut up when my uncle refused to look anyone in the eye. He remembered. He admitted it. And even if nothing else changes, even if they decide I'm the villain for talking at all, that matters. My memories are mine. My sensitivity kept me alive. If anyone else out there is being told they're too sensitive for reacting to things that hurt them, you're not. You don't have to turn your pain into a joke so other people can stay comfortable. You don't have to keep eating steak at tables where your feelings are the punchline. I'm still at the beginning of figuring out what comes next. But at least now, when the little voice in my head says, it wasn't real, I have another voice that can answer, he remembers too.